Welcome to Freedom Motivated with Christina Whiteley, the podcast that empowers you to live life on your terms. Are you uninspired, bored, and unhappy with where life has taken you? And yearning for a life filled with purpose and passion? Look no further. We are here to ignite that fire within, to awaken your true potential, and to guide you on a journey towards absolute freedom. Join us as we delve into the minds of incredible entrepreneurs and freedom leaders from very different backgrounds with incredible stories. Be inspired by their resilience and learn from their challenges they faced along the path to success. These are the brave individuals who fight every day to awaken people to the power of self-responsibility and who inspire them to create a life they are absolutely in love with. Each episode will explore the concept of conscious income creation, building a business or creating a career that aligns with your unique skill set, purpose, values, and belief system. Discover the strategies, tips, and invaluable insights shared by our guests as they guide you towards making a living doing what you love. It's time to break free from the shackles of conformity and embrace the freedom that awaits. Are you ready to take control of your life? Are you ready to step into the life you've always dreamed of? Then welcome to Freedom Motivated, the podcast that will ignite your spirit and unleash your potential. All right. I'm excited for another episode of Freedom Motivated with this lovely lady who, by the way, I've been following on social media for quite some time. Her story is hard to believe, really. And I'm really excited to share it with you today because I think we need to have more conversations like this, conversations where we look at all sides and all perspectives and start to realize, what's going on in this world so that we can start creating a better life and a better world for future generations, for our kids. Because if we don't turn this ship around, things are going to shift real quick, and they're going to have a very different life than the one that we had growing up. And I think that, as a mom, and Miss Kristen Nagle today is going to have a conversation with me. As a mom, you start to look at what you want for your kids, and we all want a better life for our kids. And if we don't start paying attention, it's not going to be that way. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. Miss Kristen Nagle is here today, and she's going to talk a little bit about herself, give you a little bit of a background. If you don't know who she is, you are in for a wild ride, my friends, because this woman has been moving and shaking the last couple of years, and she's a voice to be heard, and one that I really appreciate has stood up and said her piece and stood up for what she knows is right. So please, without further ado, I would love for you to introduce yourself and share a little bit about you and your family and who you are.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's great to come on here and connect like this with yourself and your audience. So I was a former nurse of 14 years, graduated in 2006. I spent most of my career in the neonatal intensive care unit. So working with microprems, premature babies, 23 weeks and beyond. I was an indoctrinated nurse. I believed all of it. I believed everything I was taught. And because of that, I'm trying to remember my own journey and to have compassion to where people are at, because I believed everything that I learned in school. And it wasn't until my first son was born in 2015 that I call it divine intervention. Something pressed on me to look into what to feed him as his first foods as a baby. And I was kind of, this cocky nurse. I was like, well, I work with babies. I'm in health and wellness, like fitness. Like I know what to feed my baby, but I kept being pressed, look into it. And when I did, I realized that I didn't know anything, that everything we taught were lies, that what the pediatricians were pushing to feed our babies was some of the worst things we can do. And I became really passionate about this information to the point I enrolled at the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition, became a holistic nutritionist so I could better equip myself with knowledge to keep teaching parents. And through that school, I did it part-time over 2 years, and it was the most in-depth learning I've ever had about health and wellness in our body, more than my 4 years of nursing. And I just thought, if I didn't know this, then there's probably a lot of parents that didn't know this. I'm supposed to know this as a nurse. And I realized health is so easy. Health is so simple. Why aren't we doing this? And that was the aha moments of, they don't want us to know. They don't want us to know how simple it is. They don't want us to be in control of our bodies and have responsibility and take care of ourselves, because they want us to be controllable, remain in victim mode, and stay their patients.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my awakening into all of this. My second son was born in 2018, and that's when I started to find my voice and start speaking out more about not just food, but childhood immunizations. Because I realized, well, if I'm so concerned about what they're eating, what are they being injected with? Another thing we're not taught in nursing school. So I went deep, dove deep into all that information, started speaking out about it, got in trouble with my College of Nurses then in 2018, 2019, was not ready to lose my license. So I took the slap on the wrist and said, you're right, I'm wrong, I won't do it again. But as I walked out of that meeting, I told them that nothing would stop me from speaking out if they tried to mandate anything on my children. I didn't think 2020 was going to come so soon after that. And
Oh, sister.
then all of a sudden, I just wrapped up this with my college. I knew the big goal with injections was to mandate it on adults. I didn't know how they were going to do that. I had already unlearned germ theory, terrain theory, the contagion myth. And so when they started talking about Wuhan in 2019, I thought, oh, this is how they're going to do it. This is how they're going to convince the people to, get these things mandated. And so I've just been speaking out ever since. And then, as they say, the rest is history. We can dive into whatever part of that we want to. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many things. And like, I think you broke a few brains in the first 5 minutes, right? Because this is a really, and like, I have so much compassion, honestly, because this is a very difficult thing to understand that we've all been indoctrinated into the system. And, it's interesting because my wake up call was about 10 years ago when I was really, 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 really sick. No doctor could tell me what to do. They're like, just take Zantac every day. Like, just take this whatever pharmaceutical to make your stomach feel better. And I was like, no, there has to be something else that's wrong with me. And so I kept investigating and investigating, ended up seeing a hormone therapist. And then my husband came home and he's like, we're going on the paleo diet. I'm like, what the hell is a paleo diet? And he's like, well, this is what we're going to do to make you feel better. And I'm the one that cooks. And so this is how we're going to eat. And I'm just like, okay. Right. And I didn't know at the time that I had this massive gluten sensitivity, that I was so sick. Like I couldn't go out for dinner. I had stomach aches every day. I like had all of these symptoms that I don't even want to talk about. And nobody was helping me in the health space.
Yeah.
No doctor, no one. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why would they just want to prescribe? And I would just, every time I went to the doctor, I'd get a prescription and then I'd throw the prescription out, right? Like every time I would do that, because I'm like, I don't want to take this because look at like this list of side effects. So I've got to figure this out. And when we started eating paleo and I started healing my gut, and then we went to keto, and then we found kind of a mix of things that would work because everybody's different, right? Everybody has a different body and needs a different diet. I realized that they wanted to keep us sick. They didn't actually want us to heal. And so, isn't that interesting that we all have to go through something of this awakening?
Yes.
And I'm excited to talk to you because I know that you worked in the neonatal unit with babies, and when we left Canada to come to Mexico, there was a lot of pressure. I had 2 miscarriages. We were trying to have a baby, and like we had family and friends being like, why are you not getting this? This is going to protect you. Like, this is the thing that's going to protect you and the baby. It's
No.
so dangerous to get, this virus without being protected. And I was like, I've been in the health space. Like I've been, helping people contribute to their positive health outcome for 6 years now. And I know for a fact that we are not allowed to recommend anything to pregnant and breastfeeding women, like nothing, like not even
Yes.
vitamin C, like it, and so now you're telling me that that this experimental thing that you're going to give us that has no long-term studies is going to be totally fine. Like, to me, just like connecting the dots, I'm like, this doesn't make sense. But I had all of this pressure and people saying, why are you not doing this? Why are you being difficult? Are you just trying to go against what people are saying? And I'm like, no, why would this be difficult? Like, I want to go to restaurants. I want to go hang out with my friends. I want to go do all those things. Like, it's the hardest on me. And so we blindly trust. And I think that is really something, and especially people that are in the health space, because you've been, raised this way and you've had an education this way, but then you come to this place where you start questioning it and your license is on the line.
Yeah.
Like, so tell me a little bit about how this all unfolded, because I know that with your background and now you're highly educated and you're like, it's the food. Like, if we just eat healthy food, we can be healthy people, but the government said, well, this is our food pyramid and this is what we should eat, or this is what's safe. And I've heard some wild stuff in the last year, like that Lucky Charms are healthier than eggs.
Oh my
You
gosh. Yeah.
know, or like some pretty crazy stretches
Yes.
when it comes to this kind of stuff, right? But like when you started looking into this, what was your big like awakening? What was your big aha moment that you're like, okay, so we've been taught this in nursing our whole life, and now if I realize with natural health and food that we can do this, what was the kind of that moment that you're like, this is not okay?
Yeah, well, the Canadian food guide is just garbage. Like it is
Yeah.
terrible. Same with like the American one. Like all of the food guides put out there for us are just awful. You know, I don't believe so much that we are gluten intolerant. I believe that we are intolerant to what they have done to gluten,
Yes.
with the sprays, with how it's prepared. For example, bread should at least, at minimum, take 3 to 4 hours to make, and we are making it in 13 minutes, right? Like
Right.
we've lost the art in the process of making and creating and cooking our food. So like you think of all the carbs, like you said, Lucky Charms. And so with babies, what is pushed most often? I think, when I was a baby, I think I was fed pablum at 4 months. Like
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
disgusting to think about. Like, and now it's rice, fortified rice cereal. And when I started looking into that, I was like, okay, well, babies don't have teeth. They don't have their molars. They're not producing amylase. Amylase is the digestive enzyme needed to break down grains. So they're being introduced to these foods where they don't have the enzymes to break it down. So it's just sitting in their stomach and not doing anything for them. And then why are we fortifying with synthetic vitamins when they can just eat the real thing, which is just have a scoop of liver, have a scoop of bone marrow, eat some runny egg. Like, Homo milk was pushed to be, the
Yeah.
transition milk to wean off of. Homo milk is highly processed. Nothing with that high of fat should be homogenized, should be all one. When you think of like you're cooking and you're making soups, or you have layers, like it separates into different layers of
Yes.
fat. That's how our milk should look. So the fact that they have to highly process it with heat to break down all the particles and the molecules to make it all even, is just for aesthetic purposes. So it looks more pleasing to us. It's so not necessary and it's not healthy. So, but these are the things that we're giving our kids, these highly processed, broke down fake foods. And there's so much in the health world. And I'll be honest, when I was going through nutrition school, I started to kind of move too extreme on the other side, where I started to fear all the things.
Sure.
Everything's
Yeah, once you
toxic and
start seeing
poison
it.
and
Yeah.
dangerous. And it's just like, so I was very restrictive with my boys during their first little bit. And I've had to find a balance of knowing that uh, food is not good or bad. It's neutral. It's how it is perceived in our body and how we perceive it and how it nourishes us and how we feel about it and the emotions attached to it. You don't want to be eating McDonald's every day. That's something I do not promote. So please don't twist my words like that. It's nasty. But I think you have to be careful of not going too extreme on the other side as well, and finding this healthy balance where you feel nourished, you're enjoying everything that you eat, everything that surrounds you, that life is, yes, the food that you consume, but it is everything around you that you're consuming, people's energy, the energy in the
Yeah.
atmosphere, how you feel about your life, how you're waking up. And there's just a lot more to it. Yeah, than
Absolutely.
just what we eat. Mhm.
As you sit in Costa Rica and I sit in Mexico on a
I know, I was thinking,
completely
I was like,
different energy
the
plane, right?
last few, the last few interviews I've done, I've been the only one in tank top, and I was like, oh, we match both in yeah, southern hemispheres here.
You know what? It's so interesting. So, I knew some of this stuff. My daughter is almost 8, and I knew some of this stuff. Like, I knew with immunizations that something wasn't quite right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And so, I didn't do as much research. Like, you have a medical background, you have a science brain. I'm a creative brain. And so, we knew enough to separate her vaccines. We knew enough to not give her all of them when she was little, but I have like this little like twinge of regret that I didn't do more research on these things. And I also like know that the word anti-vaxxer is like a very heavily used word, right? And that people are like,
Yes,
oh, they just dismiss you like you're an
yes,
anti-vaxxer for questioning it, right? But even in this pregnancy, we give our brand new babies a vitamin K shot, right? Like immediately we give them a vitamin K shot. And in this pregnancy, I learned, well, we can also give them vitamin K drops and get the same outcome without actually having, and maybe you've got some feedback on this for me. I have no
yes,
idea.
absolutely, I
I'm sure you do. Right.
do.
But, and I'm just like, but like, you don't have to do this. Like, there are other ways around this. And, like, once you started looking into those things, I'm curious about having that conversation because as we're sitting here waiting for our next baby, baby, I
Yeah.
think I want to do things differently after the last couple of years. Like, I don't have the faith and the trust that I did before. And I'm just so grateful nothing bad happened with her. Like, I'm just so grateful that we didn't, overload her system or anything like that. But I still have this guilt because I didn't look into it as much as I should have.
And absolutely, because we're told to trust, right? We're
Yeah.
told to trust the people that study this, that put their,
That's the science, man.
like, yeah, trust the science, trust like these experts, trust these people, trust everyone outside of you. And
Yes.
that's been the messaging that we've been taught and conditioned since conception. Because at conception, I've spoken about this a lot is that's at the time it's like, okay, I'm pregnant. Now what? Now we go to the dating ultrasound. Okay, there's a baby in there. Perfect. Okay, let's go to the next ultrasound. The next one. Is everything okay? Is my baby growing? Doctor, please, like, tell me what's going on
Yeah.
outside of my body. And we continue this until baby is born. In that moment, we're told how to push, when to push, what to do on our backs. Baby's born, brought to a table, immediately shot with man synthetic injections because baby is flawed. Baby is not created perfectly. Of course, we need to help it. And that, what does that messaging send to mom and baby? What do we do next? Well, baby visit. Well, baby visit. Tell me what's going on with my baby. Everything has been designed since conception, since in the womb, to take trust out from us.
Yeah.
So I've had to do a lot of unlearning in that. My two boys were two medical births. Like I was like, I don't need to learn about birth. Why would I read this book? I was like, they're just going to tell me what to do. I've seen what it looks like in the hospital. Like I'm
Totally.
good to go. Like ridiculous. And I was induced, had epidurals, did all the things. And then they say birth is the last one to go because it's been the most programmed in our brains to fear it for generations since early 1900s. So it's the last one, the hardest one to get around. So with my son, my oldest son, I stopped his immunizations at 18 months. I remember going into the pediatrician's office when I started to have questions, and I wasn't convicted enough in how I felt. I knew something was off, but I didn't know what. And she guilted me. Baby girl.
Okay.
She guilted me into, well, if you don't, then this is what's going to happen. And if you don't, then
Yeah.
he's going to get
Yeah.
sick. If you don't, he's going to end up in the hospital in the ICU. And so I remember walking out of there, not feeling good about what had happened and thinking that I'm just going to go for a walk, thinking that,
It's okay.
I never want to base a decision on fear again.
Yes.
If I'm gonna
Yes.
just if I'm gonna decide on something, it has to be a full yes or full no, but because of a place of my understanding and my confidence. So that's why I dove deep into everything, and I didn't look at the injections. I didn't look at the ingredients. That wasn't my first place to go. I was like, well, I don't even know what they're getting injected for. We don't really learn this. You hear the names, this and that, but what actually are all the injections for? What are the diseases? How do you get them? Are there treatments for it? What's the worst case scenario? I wanted to dive into the actual illnesses. And when I did that, my fear was removed because I realized, well, these are not to be feared. They've told us to fear them. We don't need to. There's things to do for them. There's remedies, there's treatments. And most of these are normal childhood illnesses that are rites of passage that children need to fully develop into adult life. So that was how I went about that. And from that learning, I was like, okay, now I can stand firm in this. And now I'm going on rants, and I do this often, and I've kind of lost where I'm like trying to go with this. Usually it comes back to a point. Sometimes I do talk too much. You have to like reel me in.
No.
There's like lots going on in my head, but I remember then my second son was born, and I was like, that's it. Like, no. And I could confidently say no to everything, to the vitamin K, because we aren't created wrong. Why, there's a reason for everything. God has created us divinely and perfectly with intent, and there's no mistakes. So we are not lacking a vitamin D at birth. We're not lacking anything at birth. We have everything that we need, and there's a reason for everything. Because there are rare situations that happen, and in life, things do. They have created the vitamin K for a rare condition that happens maybe 1 in 100,000 births, and I could even be getting that wrong, could even be more.
I think it
And
is
generalize
1 in
and put
100,000.
a blanket statement for everyone, and it's just not the case. We're not created with flaws and mistakes. Mm-hmm. I was like,
No,
door
it's
slammed.
okay.
Where am I
It's
going with this?
okay. It's all good. So no. But it's important, right? And like for those of us that went through this before or are still uncovering all of these things, it's important to do your reading. It's important to go through and see what you're comfortable with. Like my husband and I rationalized, like, okay, if something can kill her, then we're probably going to give her an immunization. And now, after the last few years, I'm like, what? Like, have we actually been told the truth about these things? Because people were
Mhm.
so fearful about COVID. And I remember, I feel so lucky that my husband listens to alternative news sources. He does it so I don't have to worry. He worries. And so very early on, we were following Dr. Chris Martinson, who's got a background in virology and also economics. It was like really, really helpful because he could take these complex situations, he could run the numbers, and then show the data and be like, what they're saying here is not actually what's in the data.
Yes.
And so we could see this correlation. And then they're like, well, this is how they're treating it here. But in Africa, they're treating it like this. And it's like, well, why are we not treating it like this here? Oh, big pharma. That's
Yes.
why.
Money.
Because money, right? And then they started banning those supplements and those pharmaceuticals, even though they had won Nobel prizes, even though they were treating people in other areas, they started banning them from our country so that they were not available for people to use as, would you say, prophylactic? Is that how you'd say it?
Mhm. Mhm.
So it was like, again, another connecting of the dots, being like, this is not adding up. And if you used a little bit of critical thinking and a little bit of research and didn't just trust the science, or I'm going to trust my friend on TV that says that they're a virologist, or they're looking into all these things and this is the right way to go about it. It's like, well, actually, if you look at the data, this isn't the right way to go about it. There's a lot of people that are getting sick. There's a lot of people that are being put on ventilators when they shouldn't be. There's a lot of drugs that they're using that are like actually working the opposite way of what they should be. And I was fearful of like having to be in the hospital. Like both my husband and I were like, we're not going to the hospital if we get sick. That's like the last place that
Yeah,
we're going,
absolutely.
right? And so
Mhm.
I can't even imagine this awakening for you when you're a nurse. And what's fascinating to me is that you're like, we're not taught about these vaccines. We're not taught about what's in them for our kids. We're not taught about any of this. It's just, this is what you do. This is
Yes.
how it is. And I'm just like, how has that happened in this time that we're not actually educating people that should be educating us? We put this blind trust into people that are experts in their field, right? And I think that really is a really dangerous game when we start doing that, when we start taking our own health out of our own hands and putting it in the hands of somebody else's.
Absolutely.
So what I would love to chat about now, I'm so grateful for this conversation, is that I know that things have been very interesting for you for the last couple of years because you started speaking out about these things and you started, raising awareness. And so how has that affected you and your family over the last couple of years? And what does that look like? Because I know you've lost your job in the process. Like you've lost your
Mhm.
job. And by the way, BC is I think the only province that still has not invited their healthcare workers back to work because they didn't comply.
No.
And it's
That
so
that's
funny.
that's not true, and it drives me crazy.
Really? So there's other, so tell me, like,
Yes.
obviously there's more, but it was funny because I was home for the summer and I mentioned it because people are complaining about healthcare. And I'm like, well, that's because you got rid of 30% or more of people
Yes.
and they can't go back to work. So they're all going to Alberta. Of course your healthcare is going to suffer.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
People think because the provinces did things differently. So yes, in BC, it is a provincial mandate.
Mhm.
In Ontario, Doug Ford tried to wipe his hands of it and didn't want to get involved, thinking he was doing the right thing. He allowed it up to every institution to come up with their own policy, and every
Oh,
institution did create a policy. And there's very few places that have reinstated nurses. Some long-term nursing homes have out of complete desperation,
yeah.
but most of the big hospitals and all the other places that put this policy in place, they're still there. Many friends are without work still. Well, no, they're probably never going to go back to work. They were still firing people just this past fall. So that's not true about BC. It does drive me a little bit crazy.
No, but I'm glad that you shed some light on that because I knew it wasn't province wide, but I didn't realize that each institution could do that. And like we're down here with a gentleman who, he's a friend of ours now. He sailed a sailboat down from Vancouver and is in Cabo now because he was a surgeon for 20 years, 20 years. And he caught COVID. He had antibodies. He's like, I'm not doing this because it doesn't make sense and I don't stand for this. He went to the highest level of health government in Alberta, and they said, if you don't get this, you don't have a job anymore. You lose your
Yeah,
license.
it's
And
crazy.
it blows my mind that you are getting rid of good people who are logical, who actually say, I'll comply, I'll take the test, I'll whatever,
By
like
by design, right? Exactly what you just
by
said.
design, you're getting
Good
rid of
people
good
that are
people.
logical, because you can't have that. That was like what I realized in nursing. They trick you into thinking you're a critical thinker. You can think for yourself. Like, this is what nursing is critical thinking. As long as you stay in this box.
Box.
There was a
Yeah.
fine print. There was a fine print I didn't realize when I signed up for nursing school about that. So yes, we're going to teach you how to critical think, but in this box. Once
Okay.
you step out of that, then you're on your own, and you will be ostracized, and you will be persecuted.
Oh, cancel
Whether that's
culture is
lose your
everywhere, right?
that's what it is. So that's kind of basically what started to happen to me. Was I started to be bullied at work. Some even on Facebook threads, they would talk about me and make fun of the things I would feed my kids and this and that, bone marrow, or I was talking about catnip, how catnip is amazing to help children with their fevers, and how it's a diaphoretic, all these things. And then they're like, that is not safe. I know that is not safe. As in the same breath, they're I'm
Nuggets and
losing thoughts.
fries, right?
Yes. Well, no, Accutane, referring to Accutane as this like acne medication where you can't even, you have to sign, you shouldn't get pregnant. You shouldn't, be trying for a baby. You can't go out in the sun. It's like, okay, you're promoting that. That's what I was looking for. Promoting that while, dismissing catnip. My baby girl has been sick the last little bit.
Yeah,
So she hasn't slept. Therefore I haven't slept. So I'm not firing on all
it's okay.
cylinders today. So I apologize. But so speaking out, I was ostracized, bullied at work, to the point where they wrote in many letters about me to management about not wearing proper PPE, because I would sit at my desk, similar to what I am now, looking at my computer screen, put my goggles on my head, maybe move my mask down, and they're terrified of me. They were terrified of me. They knew that outside of work, I was not living in fear. I was living my life normally. I was going to protest, and I was not wearing a mask, and actually advocating and trying to help people, to do the same, to be confident in not wearing a mask in different institutions. And so they would make up things to management about me. It still kills me that, that actually made the reports about the goggles on my head. It's like, what do you think is happening with my eyes? So I was I was suspended, and then continued to speak out, organized a freedom rally in my hometown, London, Ontario. And that's what put me first on the media. I was then definitely suspended, investigated by the College of Nurses of Ontario, and that kind of set my journey moving forward. I found another nurse in Canada, Sarah's Union. She was speaking out. We connected with some American nurses. We spoke on a health and freedom stage in Washington, D.C. at the Supreme Court with Kevin Jenkins, Del Bigtree, and Dr. David Martin. It was amazing. It just so happened to fall on January 6th. So when we flew home, we were deemed domestic terrorists. We had the
Oh my
RCMP.
gosh.
Yeah. We had the RCMP show up at our house to interrogate our involvement in the rioting and storming of the Capitol. We were immediately terminated from our jobs. And I think I still have 3 or 4 nursing schools teaching about me about what not to do, about, not to riot and storm the Capitol.
That's
So it's,
crazy. Like,
yeah.
does it seem like you're watching your life through a movie? Like, does it seem
Yeah,
like you're,
yeah,
you know what I
especially
mean?
now
Like,
looking back, like we were talking before we went on air, is just like when you're kind of removed, you get to see things differently from a whole different lens. And at that time, it was complete survival mode, flight or fight. And I just kept moving one step. Okay, this would happen. We got to do this. It just kept going, 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 not even realizing, where I was going or what was next. You just go, you just do the things. And now looking back, it's like, holy shit, like that. There was a
yeah.
lot of stuff that happened and went on. And from January 6th, we formed Canadian Frontline Nurses and became this pivotal voice for the nursing and healthcare community, and for the population, for citizens that felt the same. And we continued to speak out and organize rallies across the country, and whatever we could do. Yeah, throughout the
It's
last few years.
And I'm so grateful for people like you, but I also understand the scrutiny that you faced. I can't even imagine, what you've gone through with your family. Do you ever regret standing up for it? Do you ever regret like using your inside voice out loud because of how difficult it's been?
No, and it has been very difficult at times. It's been very dark. It's been very challenging for many reasons that we've all faced, the losing the career, friends,
Yeah.
family, community, all these things that are not unique to me. Mine were just public. Um,
Gotta love that.
yes, but no, I don't regret it. I remember at the beginning, because I knew all this was a sham. I mean, our nursing union fought for years for us to not wear the mask if we did not receive the flu shot. It was
Yes.
either, yeah, mask or vaccinate or mask or whatever, and we won. And our union proved that it was discriminatory and did not stop transmission. And so to watch the theatrics and the lies around me and not say anything was so much harder on my soul. Like
Painful.
my soul was dying every day. And I was starting fights at home, like it just, everywhere, just miserable. So speaking the truth, I, withheld integrity, character. I stood steadfast, my convictions, beliefs, and values. And that's something that no one can take away. And
Absolutely.
I've gained a lot more than I have ever lost in the end.
It's so interesting about the whole mask thing because it was proven very quickly that it wasn't effective. But yet, people still to this day, I see people like
To
tourists
this
in Cabo
day.
walking down
Yes.
the road with a mask on. I'm like, please stay on the other side of the road. Like, I just can't. It's so ridiculous.
It's
And
so
and
ridiculous.
people, didn't realize. Like, I talked to a few nurses, and they're like, it's so interesting. Everything we are taught in nursing school has gone out the window now. Like,
Yep.
it's all gone out the window. And I would come here and I would see kids that were walking to school and they were wearing a mask,
Oh,
but it
that
looked
was
like them.
heartbreaking.
And but the mask, it looks like they've worn for 3 weeks. It's got dirt,
Yes.
like dust. And I'm just like, this is so much worse for us than it is not wearing one, right? Like, this is so much worse for these kids and their health and their oxygen levels and all of these things. And I felt so bad. Like, that's part of the reason that I pulled my daughter from school is that she was 5. Can you imagine going to a French immersion school for the first time, trying to learn a second language when your mouth is covered and the
No, you
teacher,
can't.
like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then I went and talked to the teacher and I said, she's not doing this. She's like, oh, you're one of those parents. I'm like, damn right, I'm one of those parents. Do you want to cause a problem? Okay. So I was like, no. And she's like, oh, well, if she chooses not to, she can sit in the back. I'm like, so you're going to segregate my child because
Yeah.
she's not going to wear a mask? Like, are you nuts? Like, are you absolutely nuts? And then we talked about them removing the age of consent. Oh, so now I
Yes.
put my daughter to school, and whatever you deem necessary for her health is what is right, and there's no parental say in that. And didn't we just have like 2 days ago one of the MPs in
Yes.
Parliament say that there
State
are
it
no
out
parental
loud.
rights
Yes.
in Canada?
Yes.
And whether that was a Freudian slip or not, I don't think it was. I think he actually
No.
meant it, right? And so, like, you start to wake up to the fact that they don't want you to have any influence on your kids. The government, the state wants to be the biggest influence on your children. Now, we look at other countries that are like that, and what do we call those? We call those countries communist. That's what we
Mhm.
call those countries. But yet we live in a first world country. We live in Canada. We're free, everything is great. And it's like, but if we don't pay attention to what's actually happening right now, what's happening in the court system, which is my next question to you after organizing these protests, right? That we don't realize that. And we were talking about this right before we came live, right? It's already here. What is
It's here.
happening is already here. It's already happening. And so we talk about putting a stop to it. It's like, no, we have to reverse what's happening because they've already put all of these things in motion in the back silently, right? Without telling anybody. And now we're already in this position that, like, our families are in danger. And that's part of the reason that we left, is because, we read the Emergency Act. We knew that they could come in and take our land. We knew that they could take our agriculture. We knew that they could separate us from our kids if we didn't comply. Like, how far down the line is this going to go? And I also knew from working on social media that free speech was a thing of the past. We
Oh,
started
yeah.
getting censored everywhere. And I've been sounding the alarms on free speech for years, like for at least 4 years, because I saw it come down the pipeline and I was working in that space every day. People are like, no, that's not true. That's not true. And I'm like, no, it is true. Now you can't even see the news globally in Canada. They're going to start censoring podcasts because they realize this is the only space that we have to be honest and tell our version or our side of the story. And by the way, I believe the truth is always in the middle. We all have our perspectives. We all get to see things a certain way. And we may not agree on everything, but we have to be able to have conversations, and we have to be able to
Absolutely.
use those conversations to learn and grow together, and in a respectful manner, not where we're going to be called a racist, or somewhere we're going to be called somebody that is transgender, or not transgender, transphobic, or whatever. It's like, no, that's actually not the case at all. I love all and want everybody to live peacefully and happily. But now you're going to come at me and say that I'm this type of person because I want to ask a few questions and have a conversation. So can you just tell a little bit to the audience, actually, not just me, but the audience, can you tell them a little bit about like how this is unfolded? Because really, you lost your job, you're standing up for what you believe in, you have an education behind you that supports your truth 100%. And so now, like, how has that played out for you in the last couple of years?
Yeah, in 2021, I received 11 summons, and summons are not tickets. They're like summoning you to court where they're going to decide your outcome. Thankfully, 7 of those were dropped, but 4 have moved forward. One of them was for attending church on Easter Sunday in 2021. So I received a $12,000 500 fine for that because I was convicted guilty. That decision has since been appealed, and we're still awaiting to hear back on the decision on that. Another trial just finished January 30th and 31st, and I just got that decision back February 6th, that I was convicted guilty of organizing a rally in London, Ontario, and fined $20,000 plus court costs. And I still have 2 more trials coming up for speaking at protest. And this is incredible because it just shows how much the government is trying to stop any dissenting voice.
Yeah.
Because if you look at all the other protests that are allowed, that are happening, that have been happening since 2020 with no fallout, it is only the ones that go against the government narrative and stand up to what they're trying to do to us. And they're trying to use myself as an example, and several others, because my co-accused, because there's 2 of us, my co-accused pled guilty before trial. It was just, what was best for her, and was charged $1,000. And here I am with this egregious fine of $20,000, because they know that I have been a voice and continue to be so. So they are targeting certain people to use us as an examples to make sure no one else might get the great idea to stand up. But what is happening now is this has allowed Canadians to see what's happening, and people are rallying together for this. And I think they realize that, hey, we're not going to be bullied. We're not going to be silenced by the government. We're not going to allow them to, take away our voice, and we're going to use it. And so a lot of people have been rallying behind me for all Canadians, not just myself, to say, hey, you're not going to silence us, and we are standing up. And so it's been amazing to see, for sure.
So I have to ask you this question then. Is protesting illegal in Canada?
If it goes against what they want, yes. So what I was charged for was under the Reopening Act of Ontario, which was really like the closing of Ontario. These funny little names they have for it. And it was because at that time there's all these different phases and restrictions. You could have 5 people outside, 10 people. When I was charged, I think the cap was 100, and we had over 200 people at our event. So going back to 2020 and like listening to these insane rules they put in place, it's just, I'm embarrassed for the officers that testified against me, because it's like, really, like 100 people versus 200, what's the difference? You think that's going to all of a sudden, create some kind of big outbreak? Like if it was 110, those extra 10 people were the ones that were going to, create this outbreak and, a devastation of people and transmit something. Like it's insane. So yes, they did try to make it illegal to protest against the government narrative. Mm-hmm.
And so what's really interesting to me is over the last few days, I've seen protests for Palestine in New York City and them ripping down American flags, putting up Palestinian flags. I've seen protests for Palestine in Canada and them putting up Palestinian flags over top of the Canadian flags. And that seems to be okay. that seems to be okay because that's something that's part of the narrative, right? That's part of, well, it's either the Ukraine or Palestine, or who are we fighting for next? We came back in the summer and all of these people had Ukrainian flags up.
Yeah.
And I found that's so, like, that virtual signaling so interesting, because I'm like, when have you ever cared about the Ukraine before? And that is not our war to fight. Like, this
Yeah.
is absolutely none of our business. And here we are sending millions, 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 hundreds of millions of dollars over there where we can't even feed our own. And now we're bringing in a bunch of immigrants, which, by the way, like, I'm all for legal immigration, right? Like, I am a legal immigrant in Mexico. I'm all for legal immigration and for stimulating the economy. But when you are bringing people in and you can't afford to have them there, and you're giving them payouts instead of qualifying them financially, instead of bringing them in because they've got jobs, like some of the assaults that are going on in New York City from people that have come in, or if you look in Paris, and this is the other thing people are not talking about, is like all of the protests. They're not showing it on the news, right? All of the
No.
farmers protesting in Europe
Yes.
that finally had a massive win, because people
Yes.
don't realize how close we are to not being able to produce our own food. And you think that, food rations are a thing of the past? You think that this could never happen again? It wasn't that long ago that all of this stuff did happen. And we just have to look back in history and realize, hey, like, this could happen again. And I know, like, as Canadians, we're polite. I know that we're a little bit complacent because we want to keep the peace. That's who we are as our
Yeah.
culture, right? But the problem with that is, you can't just live peacefully if you care about the next generation. You can't just live in this space where, we're just going to live it out and there's nothing we can do about it. That's kind of the mindset
Yes,
of
that
most
is.
people, right? And so how do we have conversations with people that are like that feel that way? Which, by the way, I understand. You want to keep your peace. You don't want to go down this rabbit hole, right? I have, like, some family members who are like, "Oh, you've gone down the rabbit hole." I'm like, once you have, there's no turning back. Like, you see it
Yes.
everywhere. You see it in movies, you see it in TV shows, you hear it on the radio. Like, it is everywhere. You're being hit at all angles. And so I'd love to know, like, how you have conversations. I feel like you probably upset a lot of people because you're blunt and bold like I am, right? And it's been, like, really hard over the last couple of years because I just haven't had the conversations. I've just, like, you know what? We believe two different things. I want to keep the peace with everybody, but in the same sense, it's like, if we don't start having these conversations, we're going to be in big trouble coming down the line.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is a hard one. I'm at the very beginning, I'm trying to talk to people and, they get very upset. Kristen, we can't talk about it. We just have to agree to disagree. And it's okay. Okay. You don't want to hear it. You're not ready yet. But I always say it's by living your life by example, by leading by example, by, standing up for your beliefs, by standing up for this, making different decisions. And I hope that sparks curiosity and conversation. I always thought it was interesting. I went from indoctrinated nurse, went back to school to become a holistic nutritionist, now have an understanding of conventional and holistic health. I changed, made different decisions. You can clearly see the health of my children and how we're, thriving and everything else. And it's like, I went from being this respected nurse to all of a sudden crazy, instead of being like, wow, you used to do this, you did all these things, and now you're doing something differently, and it looks like you're doing well with it. Why did you change? What's different? And it goes back to that conditioning and programming of, we're not supposed to ask because we've already been told, well, that's bad. So because that's bad, we don't want to know about it. You're just wrong. You're bad. You're a quack. You're this, that, all the names, right? They've conditioned us to name call, like, playground bullies, instead of having polite, open conversations where, can you tell me about that? Tell me more about that. Why? Okay. I might not understand. I might not agree, but thank you for sharing, and sharing your perspective. So I think at this point, to be honest, it's just leading by example, and trying to maybe ask questions instead. Well, why did you choose that way? Do you feel better? Why do you think that is? Ask them questions and get them to answer instead of us telling them.
I
I think
agree with
is
you.
another approach as well, because I do this with other moms when they feel unsure in the decisions they're making for their children, and they're getting all these outside noise. And I ask them, okay, well, what do you think? And they tell me, how does that make you feel? Why did you decide that? Okay, now are you changing your mind based on gut feelings or decisions you have, or because someone else? And it's usually because someone else. Now, how do you feel when you go back to your gut? Good. Then, stick with that. But sometimes, you have to ask the questions and get people to think and put the answers out themselves.
It's so interesting that intuition, like that we're, as humans, we're the only species on the planet that ignores that intuition that is telling us what is correct for our own bodies, what's correct for our own minds. And it's so funny because I was having this conversation with my daughter. She's 7, she'll be 8 in a month. And she was having some trouble at school, and she was making decisions based on what other people wanted because she didn't want to upset them. Like, is that
Hmm.
not like the
Yeah.
base of like
Yes.
everything, right? And so we had
Yes.
this big conversation about, hey, like when you make decisions, you have to be willing to stand by them. You don't have to make the same decisions that other people want you to make, but they won't feel good. If you get in trouble because you've made a decision based on something, if your health goes in the shitter because you made a decision based on what somebody else told you, that doesn't feel good. You have to feel good. I mean, it seems, honestly, it's the same in sales. You can't convince somebody to buy something for your benefit. And if it goes sideways and they don't like it, guess who it's on? It's on you, because they didn't actually make that decision of their free will. You have to allow people to do what's best for them. And I just saw all of that go out the window and people be judged for that over the last couple of years.
Yes.
And so, as frustrating as this is, I also don't want to get stuck in a place where we're angry. And like, I know that you're in the middle of lawsuits and all of these things, and it's a very real piece of your life, right? Like, that's not something that is made up. It's not something that is just gonna snap your fingers and it goes away, like so many people said COVID did. They're like, oh, we don't even talk about that anymore. I'm like, yeah, I know, after all of your jabs, nobody wants to talk about it anymore, right? But the whole point is that, like, now we have to move forward in a different way. We have to move forward in a solution oriented
Yes.
way, one that is positive, one that is educated. I love that you said live by example, because that's exactly what we've done. And people thought, we've lost friends, we've had people judge us, we and I don't give a shit. I think these last couple of years have really allowed us to just step into who we truly are. And you just no longer care what other people think, because you got to start doing what's best for you. And that might sound like a very self-centered place to be, but it actually isn't, because the whole herd mentality or mass psychosis, right? That has allowed everybody to just have this group think and do what is best for everyone. But is it best for you? Is it best for your health? I don't think any of us regret being in the place that we made a decision that was best for our health. I don't think any of us have that regret, right? And so, looking forward to the future, how do you think that we solve this? How do you think that we move through this? How do you think that we get to a space where we have sovereignty with our bodies and sovereignty with our lives, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. And I think, we have to do what is, best for us and our family. But for me, what has gotten me through is coming back and finding faith. And I
Yeah,
say, keep your eyes above, because that's what it is, not on the world. And we have to remember that where our strength comes from, where the victory is, that the victory has already been won. We have to remember who's in control of all this, and to not get so focused on all the worldly events, because that's what's going to
yes,
keep us down. The world can be a very dark and evil place, and always, it's biblically, that's how it's always been. So you can get focus in all the dark and all the gloom and all of that forever, because it's never going to end. There's always something else
yeah,
lurking there, and that will consume your life and keep you at this lower frequency and vibration, and stuck and paralyzed and not moving on. And you'll just be consumed in this fear and regret and anger and resentment, and that's what they want, right? They've taken,
of
your
course.
your life. They've won. So eyes above, remember who's in control, renew your strength and your mind, and remember that we fight this with love. And yes,
Mhm.
we're going to be angry. Yes, we're going to have moments of, just that resentment and everything else, of course, but to not sit in it. Allow those emotions to come in, feel them, get them
Release
out however
them.
you need to, release them. I like to run. That's how I do it, when I need to get out this energy, whatever works for you. Boxing bags are good, but release it and don't stay in there. And because you don't want to harden your heart, don't let them harden your heart. Because once that has happened and you
Yeah,
become jaded, then they've won.
yeah,
So we have to continue to move forward with love, with solutions, to not get stuck in the, oh, well, we can't do anything. This is happening. This is coming. Oh my gosh, like this. No. Okay. Well, what are you going to do about it? We know what's coming. We know what's here. We know it's already here. How are we moving forward? Are we going to, homeschool your children? Look at, home births. Look at different ways of finances. Become look at
Financially
entrepreneurial.
independent. Hmm.
Yes, become financially independent. I know you are like very knowledgeable and set yourself up in that area. That's kind of like, your expertise. But look at this. Get your money out of the banks. Diversify. Look at gold and
Yes.
silver. Whatever it is.
Yes.
There's so many different things, but you have to start looking at the solutions and becoming uh, the creation of where we're going, setting that example and creating that future for our children and the legacy, the next generation. Because if we get stuck in the doom and gloom and the fear, and we have to fight, we have to stop it. No, there's no stopping it. It's already here. But we need to change the cultural mindset, the society mindset, and turn our backs on that and say, you can do
I
whatever
don't
you
choose
want
that.
because I'm moving forward and I'm rising above that. You can take my job, you can take these relationships, you can take all these things, but I'm going to continue to rise higher than where you keep trying to pull me down to. You're not going to keep me trapped down here. And
That's what I keep.
that's how we
Yeah.
win. Sorry, go
That's what
ahead.
no, that's what I was saying, like, that I keep saying to my friends that are like-minded, and I keep saying to my husband, like, this is the work. Holding space, giving grace, and growing through it, and making decisions not based on fear, but based on facts, based on what we want and how we can impact the world and how we can make a positive impact by being the example, by showing up. And so you're in Costa Rica right now. Do you think that you'll end up somewhere other than Canada, like after processing through all of this, or like, how do you feel now that you have a balcony view and you're outside of it? I know when I came to Mexico, I'm like, I am living on a different energy plane. Like,
Yeah.
it's completely different here. And
Yes.
so, like, would you feel that at some point that you guys may move your family and live life somewhere else for a little while, or do you really feel rooted in, like, this is something that you're willing to go through in Canada and fight for it?
Uh, I know that's a big loaded
I
question.
know it's a hard question. I'm sorry, I
No,
didn't
it's
prepare
no, it's
you.
okay. No, it's okay because it's been on my mind for a long time. To be honest, I'm a traveler.
Yeah.
We lived in Australia for a year. I always thought we'd go back once we had kids. I thought we'd go here and there, and then the last few years have consumed my life in the fight and taken me in different directions. And I have always thought about living somewhere else outside. I've never understood or agreed with the societal norm of you go to school at a young age, then you go to another school, to then go to another school post-secondary, then to get a job, then to wait till you retire to live. Like this whole idea of 9 to 5 is so bogus to me. And that's why I actually enjoyed nursing because it was actually quite flexible. I actually enjoyed the shift work, as crazy as that sounds. I did not have that standard Monday to Friday. So it worked. But now I never wanted to stay in there because it's still a job. I wanted to kind of become my own boss. But uh,
We can work on
leaving,
that.
yes, I'll end with that when we end. I'll tell people how things I have going on. But leaving Canada, I didn't realize how much I was still weighted down there, how
Yeah.
much burden was still on my shoulders. Even though I had resigned from Canadian frontline nurses, trying to just, protect my pregnancy at the time, just focus on my family, baby girl, the homeschooling, just our little community that we have in London, which is amazing. You can't silence out all the things that are happening subconsciously.
Yeah.
You still can't see the sun. There's still lines in the sky. You still see the flags everywhere that are interchanging to the next thing that's
Whatever the
coming up.
protest is that they
Whatever it
want.
is,
Right.
there's still the ads whether it's the radio or in restaurants or going out, wherever it is, there's still things, there's still the stickers, there's still stuff. And so when I came and landed in Nicaragua and I saw a full blue sky and I saw the sun and I didn't hear any of the nonsense. There's no flags, there was no nothing. And people are just living simply. It was like could breathe again. I'd
Yeah.
I'd and I lost like 20 pounds of protective weight that I had gained during the fight.
Yeah.
And it was like, we don't need this anymore. And
You're going to be okay.
instantly lighter. So I don't know what the future holds because we're a family unit making decisions.
Totally.
And
Absolutely.
we all
I
we
know.
all need we all need to agree.
You know what I learned, Kristen, though, is that we were always taught like this grandiose vision of ourselves of like what we want in life and like we're gonna achieve this goal and we're gonna this, that, the other. Over the last few years, I just realized the most important thing is what's the next right step for you and then
Mm,
doing it. What's the next right step now? Like when we came down here, we were making decisions for our future every 2 weeks. Then it was every 90 days. Now then it was every 6 months. And now we're like, okay, like in a year or two, are we gonna be here? Are we gonna be somewhere else? Where are we gonna be? And so that starts to evolve. But I wanted to just point something out really, really that has been interesting in my life is that people will come into your life and kind of trigger you in a way that makes you question things. And so, I look back at it now and I feel so lucky. When I first went to university in Toronto, I went to school for music, and I dated a guy who his parents were entrepreneurs. He was an entrepreneur. He's a musician, and his parents were so against post secondary. And I was raised in this family like you get good grades, you get a degree, get a job with healthcare and a pension and work out the rest of your days, like to be stable. Like that was the dream that, by the way, is not available for us anymore. Okay, and so I was taught this, and it was the first time that I questioned like why would his parents not want him to go to university? Why do they think that that's a terrible thing? Like it really started to make me question. And what I realized over the last few years is that entrepreneurs have a different brain. They have a different mindset. They didn't have to comply. They didn't have to do things. So like entrepreneurs see things a little bit differently. And I look at what has happened to small business. I look at what they've done to crush the middle class, because really the middle class is full of a lot of entrepreneurs, right? And people that are kind of fighting to that higher level and building business that way. But they have a different mindset, and it kind of separated us from everybody else because we didn't have to make these decisions. And the other piece of it was, I remember when the whole Black Lives Matter thing, and I don't mean to say it like that, but the whole Black Lives Matter thing came about. And like, I am from a very small community on the coast. Almost everybody there is white. There was a couple of families. One was from South Africa. There was an Indian family that went to school with us. And then any of the kids that were Asian were exchange students. Okay. So, like, I didn't have exposure to these things. And when the Black Lives Matter came up, I actually called one of my friends, who I very much trust to have big conversations with, and I was like, I get that I'm naive in this situation, but can you please explain this to me? Like, I'm seeing all lives matter, Black lives matter, Asian lives matter, like everybody is up in arms about this. And so I went to her and I said, like, I understand how dumb this is going to sound, but I need to have a conversation so that I understand what's happening. And what she said shocked the shit out of me. She's like, Christina, it's all a distraction. I was not expecting that answer, right? She's like, women's rights, right? We're demasculating men instead of like, and I thought I was a feminist, right? Like I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna stand for women's rights. We're gonna be equal. That was not what that movement was about. It's all a distraction. Then Black Lives Matter. Now it's trans lives matter, and all of these things, right? And it's all a distraction. And when you look back in history, this has been done before, right? Divide and conquer. We're going to get everybody fighting about it, and then behind the scenes, we're going to just grab more power. We're going to take more control, and we're going to do more to create this imbalance of rich and poor, which is exactly what's happening now. And so the poor is now the majority of the population, and they're struggling and they're looking for solutions, and then the government comes in and saves them, and all of a sudden they get all the votes, and then who suffers in the process? The people that were working hard to get ahead, to do more. And it creates again this other tension, this other divide. And so it's so interesting to me to watch it all unfold, be awake to it all. Sometimes I wish that I didn't take the red pill, I took the blue one, right? Like I wish that I was just like, none of this mattered, that I could look at like the Maui fires, the Chile fires, and just be like, oh, that's a terrible tragedy, and not think anything else was going on there, and I can't anymore, because when you wake up to this, you see it everywhere, and it's the biggest propaganda war I've ever, like, in history, right? And people don't realize, they're so worried about a nuclear war that if you had the chance to listen to Tucker Carlson and Putin, you realize he doesn't want that either. It's just a threat that the Western culture is putting to make people fear it, to make them. He's like, we don't want to do that. We don't, And they
Who
talked about
would want that?
lifeline, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants that, but they want this fear instilled so that we
Yes.
behave a certain way. And I know that these conversations are triggering. I understand that people are going to listen to this and be like, that girl's whack. I'm never listening to her stuff again. Unfriend, unfollow, block, all those things. But I'm tired of being quiet about it. And I'm tired of just watching it happen. And people say, it doesn't really matter, does it? No, it does matter. So I'd love your thoughts on that. And then also, if you want to wrap up with what you're up to now and what you're doing now to help support people, I'd love to hear that as well.
Yeah. Just that the part like it does matter. I mean, yeah, like you said, like everything has been fear. I mean, wasn't that the whole thing in the 1980s was the whole nuclear weaponized threat? So
Yes,
there's always something. Someone messaged me the other day. They wanted to come out to Costa Rica and they're like, but we want to have a baby. Is Zika virus like, still something to be concerned about? I heard, a nurse family member
sure.
was like, oh no, you can't go, Zika. And like all these things are all made up to keep us fearful and keep us small and keep us in our homes and not doing anything so they can continue control and get more power and more power. So you have to be aware and ask these questions and question everything. I just like all the time, I just think of it. We are completely in the Truman Show. Like it is like that,
Totally.
that movie has never been more real to me once I
God, I love
realized
Jim
everything
Carrey.
that is what's going on. And it's like, that is it. That is it. His little wife, like adding in the little ad, as they're trying to have a conversation, like it is all around us. Like, so I ask a lot of questions and there's not much I believe in anymore unless I see it for myself or can actually know it. Otherwise, I'm like, I don't know. Could be possible, could not. I don't know anymore. So
So
ask questions,
interesting.
be open, and don't take everything at face value. Mhm.
Amen, sister. Okay, so tell me what you're up to now, because obviously, life goes on and you've got to create a future for you and your family. So what are you up to now?
Yes, a few different things. So I've launched my website, KristenNagle.ca. On that, I have a free herbal guide. Baby girl's not happy, so
It's okay.
it's
I know
okay.
she's not well.
She's out with data. So I have a free herbal guide, my top 10 remedies to add to your natural medicine cabinet. So you can grab that. Just put up an ebook for $9.97. This is on how to create your own natural first aid kit. And then today actually is my first class I'm doing on your edible backyard, Herbs
Cool.
101. So teach
Cool.
for people about natural medicine and things. Yeah. And then I have a retreat that I'm co-hosting with 5 other women coming up next week in Costa Rica.
Beautiful.
There's still a couple spots left if anybody wants to jump in last minute. So that's February 17th to the 24th. And then in September is the Reclaiming Birth Conference. So after baby girl and I had an out of system home birth, it just changed my life. And yeah, so that is, I wanted to get that information out to
Yeah.
everyone.
We'll make
Yeah,
sure
so
that we
that's
share it in the
September
next.
20th and 21st. Yeah.
Amazing. And like there are also lots of expats that are already in Costa Rica. So it's not even like people would have to travel there to see you. So we'll make sure that we put that up in the show notes and make sure that people are able to connect with you. I just want to thank you so much for coming to share your heart. I know that your little one isn't well today and you still took the time to be here. And I really appreciate that because I think it's important, the conversation that we're having. I really appreciate, what you stood up for, the values and the belief system that you have, and that you were convicted enough in that to make a difference and to be of influence to people that maybe didn't have the same courage that you did, because it does take a lot of courage and bravery to risk, right? And I have to tell you, with great risk there's great reward as well, and I know that that's coming to you and your family, and I know that you're going to be able to help a lot of people heal naturally and be able to start taking control of their health naturally. So thank you so much for being here today with me. I really appreciate you, and I look forward to more conversations in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I look forward to staying connected. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. That's another episode of Freedom Motivated. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of Freedom Motivated with your host, me, Christina Whiteley. We hope that the stories we've shared today have sparked a fire within you and ignited your passion for living life on your terms. Remember, true freedom lies in the choices we make and the actions we take. So go out there and embrace your journey. Take the leap of faith, believe in yourself, and never settle for less than what you deserve. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the Freedom Motivated podcast and never miss out on our upcoming interviews with more incredible entrepreneurs and freedom leaders. Be bold, be brave, be disruptive. You are capable of things far beyond your wildest dreams if you just have the courage to go for it. Thank you for being a part of this incredible community. Until next time, may you always be driven by the desire for freedom and motivated to make your dreams a reality.